see. Actually, oh, here comes a few more. I'll give it one more minute. Welcome. Feel free to pop a hello into the chat, say hi, share where you're calling in from today. All right. So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started here. Got a few more folks coming in, but we'll get started. So my name is Jennifer Dawson. I'm the Chief People Officer here at StartOut, and I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. And so excited to be here with you all. If this is your first time joining a StartOut event, just want to give a quick overview of kind of who we are and what we do. So StartOut is a nonprofit organization. We support LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs. We have various programs and events happening at all times, virtual, in person, chapters across the city, and programming like mentorship, access to capital matching program, expert office hours, and an accelerator program called StartOut Growth Lab. So feel free to let us know if you want any more information on that. I already see a question popping in the chat, which is great. But let me know if you have any questions. I'll be here throughout the hour about StartOut in general. I'm really excited to introduce our speaker for today. Just a very brief introduction, I'll turn it over to you, Nelly. This is Nelly Yusupova, and she'll be taking us through today's session. It is the second in a series of 3, so feel free to stay tuned. We'll pop in some information at the end as well on getting registered for the 3rd session if you're interested in that as well. With no further ado, I will turn it over to you, Nelly.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm so excited to be here. I'm joining you guys from New York City. I saw somebody here from Brooklyn, fellow New Yorker here. Let's get started. My goal today is to show you as a non-technical founder how you can run a successful tech startup even if you are non-technical. We'll talk about all different things, and my goal is to really show you that you have a lot more power than a lot of non-technical founders that I worked with believe they have at the beginning. So at the end, my goal is to show you how you can make the shift from struggling to develop your products and feeling uncertain on what you should be doing to successfully run a tech startup, even though you may not have a technical co-founder or CTO, and also share a strategy with you on how you can get one successfully at the end. So there's a workbook that goes along with this session. This is the website, techspeak.co/startout2, number 2 for the second workshop. And go there, download it. I want you to be here and present with me, which is why I created the workbook, so that you don't have to take a ton of notes, okay? This is something that you can refer back to. You can fill out the information of all the different things that we've learned so far. And that's your cue to go and download it. For those of you who don't know me, I am a CTO, startup tech advisor, creator of TechSpeak for Entrepreneurs, which is an online program where I teach the most effective and efficient ways to manage tech teams and projects without being technical or know how to code. And what's most important for you to know is that I've been doing this for over 18 years. I've refined and optimized my process over time. And I taught my TechSpeak 10-step process, which I'm going to be sharing with you today, with over 1,200 entrepreneurs, and worked with hundreds of different startups, helping them with their tech strategies, help them fix and optimize their processes. I work predominantly with non-technical founders, and everything I'm going to be teaching you today is from years and years of empowering non-technical founders know their power, have the confidence to manage a team, and these are all the different things that we're going to learn throughout the session today. I hope you're all excited. I want to maybe start out by getting an emoji in the chat, just so that you know that you guys are here. And as I'm going through the presentation, I want to make sure that you write down your questions. And if there's anything that I'm explaining to you, you have a question about, feel free to drop it in the chat. I like this session to be interactive. If there's a question that I know I'm going to cover, I'm going to let you know. And maybe we will also have probably the last 15 minutes for Q&A, so that you walk away with exactly what you need post this webinar. But I want you to be, I'm going to be asking you for commitments. I'm going to be asking you for some questions. So please interact with me in the chat, not only to help me, but also to help yourself to really get to being present here. And then also every commitment that you're making is an action that you have to take post this webinar. I'm very, very action oriented. I don't like it when people go to webinar from webinar to webinar and not taking action. They're just learning, but not actually putting the stuff that they're learning into action. And hopefully today is not going to be that day. All right, so this is where we're going today. First, we're going to learn why it is so hard to find a technical co-founder or CTO. Then we'll actually learn a strategy for building an MVP without a technical co-founder. I'll share with you 2 money-saving skills that you must do first so you don't build more than you need, how to define your MVPs properly to reduce the cost and time of development, the importance of a good process. Then I'll share how to work with me for those of you who are interested. And then probably the last 15 minutes or so, and I can stay a few minutes later if we need to, a live Q&A. So let's get started. And thank you everyone for participating. Somebody asked if there is captions. Jennifer, I don't know if you've addressed that. All right, so let's get going. For a lot of people, and let me know in the chat if this was you, most people think of a tech idea, and the first thing they think about is, I need a technical co-founder or a CTO. Raise your hand if this is you. The first thing that you think about, like, I'm a non-technical person. I can't really do this. Like, can I? I need a technical person. So you go and you spend months and months and months looking for someone who can join you because they're technical. Right? You think to yourself, having a co-founder will actually save me money because they'll work for equity and I don't have to pay them. You also think, I don't have to worry about the tech side and can focus on marketing and sales. And you start looking for one, and months go by and you have no luck. And you even maybe think to yourself, maybe I need to learn how to code. I don't know about you, but it took me personally years to become a proficient enough coder to make a big difference in actually be able to write something of use. And here's the problem with waiting. The problem is that the longer you wait, the big risk that you run is that you will miss the market opportunity. In the early days of your startup, finding a technical co-founder or CTO is actually a very, very, very common problem. That's why in my TechSpeak program, I teach people and my students that you don't find a technical co-founder or a CTO, you'll have to earn one. Here's the thing. A good technical person who wants to take a risk and work in a startup is probably already busy doing a startup with their own idea. So you have to convince these other great technical people who have a lot of opportunity. They make thousands of dollars in corporate, right? Working for someone else, why they should take a risk on you and your idea by showing to them that you're not just an idea person, but that you can actually get stuff done, that you'll be able to deliver as the business person. These other great technical people who are not already working on their own ideas, they don't have a problem earning a living in today's environment. In fact, technical people always have, or at least good technical people always have jobs, right? There's a shortage of great developers and companies are willing to pay top dollar to hire great talent. So you have, on one hand, developers who are risk averse and have plenty of choices. And on the other hand, you have 2 out of 10 startups that fail in their first year. So there's obviously a lot of risk involved. And one way to get the potential technical co-founder to say yes to you is by showing to them that you have taken some of the risk out of their time and opportunity cost investment. Okay, here's some ways. This is a very important point, okay? And here's some ways that you can actually earn a technical co-founder by taking the risk out of the situation. The first thing is to validate the idea and build a clickable prototype. This will demonstrate that there is a need and a demand for your product, that your idea is not just an idea. And as we'll find out in the second part of the presentation, these two things actually require no technical expertise, which is very exciting for a lot of non-technical founders. The second thing that you can start doing is to build a community and a following. This will further demonstrate the need for your idea and also show to your potential partners that you have the marketing skills necessary to sell the product. Again, that you're not just an idea person, but as a business person that you can market and sell. This is your strong suit, okay? And finally, invest some of your own money, if necessary, to build the MVP. And most likely, because you don't have a technical internal team, you will have to outsource the building of the MVP. This will demonstrate that you believe in the potential of the idea, that you have skin in the game, and that you will find a way to bring your idea to life no matter what. Again, in the second part of the presentation, I will show you how you can plan your MVPs effectively. So this step should actually not cost you a lot of time and a lot of money. And I know a lot of you thinking like, outsource? This is a recipe for disaster, right? We've all heard a lot of horror stories about outsourcing, but I'm going to teach you how you can outsource effectively if that's the step that you need to do. But this is the most important thing. By getting traction as a result of doing these three things, you shift the conversation from I need you to here's a great opportunity, and you should feel lucky to be a part of it. You don't need to actually say that last bit, but it will be definitely inferred by whoever you're talking to. You'll be able to say, look what I've been able to achieve without you. Imagine what we can do together. Type yes in the chat if you can see the power of this conversation shift. It is so much more effective as a sales pitch. It is so much more powerful to say, come be a part of this amazing opportunity than just saying, I need you to come help me build my product because I can't, right? And so this is the first mindset shift I want you guys to understand, and we'll address on how to do all of this. But the first thing is to really understand that there are things that you can do as a non-technical founder to get to a point of traction. And maybe you only need to do step 1 and 2 of this, right? And you don't actually need to outsource because you'll attract somebody. You'll get so much validation at the beginning, right? You'll attract someone before you have to outsource. But every single step that you take towards getting traction is always going to help you attract partners, and not just technical co-founders, but possibly investors, possibly partners, right? Who can partner to get your product out the door. There's so many different opportunities that come as a result of you taking your idea from just an idea to more of a proven something, right? Whatever you want to call it, that has some traction. All right, so with this strategy, you're going to do 2 things in parallel, okay? So the first thing is to de-risk the opportunity for the tech person by validating your idea, building the prototype, and outsourcing the building of the MVP with one goal, so you can gain traction for your idea. And while doing that, at exactly the same time, you will be actively looking for that technical co-founder or CTO by building your network of technical contacts, right? So what you're doing is you're building relationships, you're meeting potential people, and hopefully by the time you meet them, you will have enough traction that the opportunity will be a no-brainer for the potential technical co-founder or partner or an investor, right? Like this strategy works for everybody, to simply say yes to you. This approach is very effective because it allows you to showcase your commitment to the idea, showcase your skill and value as a non-technical founder, and also to highlight and demonstrate that you are an amazing asset to the success of the company. Such an important mental shift, and I want you to commit to earning a technical co-founder in the chat. And if you're watching a replay, Write it down. This is your action step as the first thing you need to do. Type I'm committed to earning your technical co-founder. It'll completely shift how you start to take action post this webinar. Okay, excellent. Thank you guys for participating. You are keeping your promise. Love that. Okay, so that's the first thing, is to make that mental shift that I can be a very important part of my startup and I don't have to wait for anyone to get started. Okay. Now, another very important point. This is a big mistake that I see a lot of non-technical founders make. Once you find someone, please don't make the mistake of saying yes too quickly. I always equate finding a co-founder to dating. And just like you wouldn't ask someone that you just met to marry you, you shouldn't ask a person that you've just met to become your co-founder. Way too many people, especially non-techies, like imagine this, right? You've approached 100 people and every one of them said no. And then 101st person says, sure, that sounds good. And you're like, amazing, finally somebody said yes, right? And then you immediately ignore all the red flags. You say yes to a co-founder relationship way too early, because it's not just about finding someone who can complement your skill set. It's about finding someone who believes in your vision and how you want to grow the company, someone that you're going to be able to solve really difficult problems with and get through challenging situations. And you also have to feel good about working side by side with this person for 5 to 7 or more years. What I'm describing here is a true partner. So don't get a co-founder so you can put a check mark that you have one. It's the wrong approach and one that can literally cost you your company. I was floored when I found out this stat. The number one reason why a lot of startups never get off the ground or fail, it's not because they couldn't build a product or anything else. It's because of a falling out between co-founders. Can you believe that? Because co-founders couldn't agree on how to grow the company or what to do, what the next steps or what to test, etc. Right? So if you find someone compatible, figure out how you can work on a project together. Maybe you pay them first and then you decide to make them a co-founder. And that's why earning a technical co-founder is such a great strategy, because it will allow you to make progress while you're searching for a partner and building that relationship with someone. It will give you room to select the best person for the job and make that decision from a position of power and not from a position of need. Try not to make emotional decisions or decisions from a position of need, because that always never a good idea from personal experience. I see a question from Josh, sorry. So Josh is asking if I'm the co-founder and very technical already, but hitting my limitations in one specific area, should I bring in a whole other tech person as a co-founder or just hire out the project on the project basis for what I need for an MVP? It's a great question, Josh. And co-founders to me are partners, okay? So you have to give them a significant chunk of your company. And if you are able to, so you have to weigh, right, the situation that you're in. Do you have money to pay somebody? Do you, like, how can you actually get this done? And oftentimes hiring someone rather than giving them equity is oftentimes the best financial decision in the long term. Because if you're going to be around for a long time, you're going to keep hold on to that equity and just pay for that project, and that person can do the work and go away, right? So it's not an easy question. It all depends on the situation that you're in, the situation and the stage of your startup, and what exactly needs to be done, how much it's going to cost. Do you need that deep expertise over time, right? So all of those things will help you evaluate what's the right solution. And we can totally discuss this later at the end once we go through the material. Okay, so if you have a follow-up question on that. All right, let's keep moving. So how can we build MVPs effectively and efficiently? That's the second part of our presentation. We're going to shift gears and learn how to build MVPs effectively. so that you can start to get traction and start to attracting partners if you need to. Okay. And the hard truth is that as a non-technical person, without a technical co-founder or CTO, you would most likely, as I mentioned, have to outsource the development of your MVP because you're not a coder. So let's address the elephant in the room. I actually, this is a lot more slides here than, so let me talk about the elephant in the room about outsourcing, right? So you're probably thinking of one or two horror stories that you've heard about outsourcing, right? Raise your hand in the chat if you've heard a horror story about outsourcing. In fact, I personally rescued at least 25 projects in the last 3 years that my team and I took over from bad outsourced situations. And I created TechSpeak after speaking to thousands of entrepreneurs in my workshops and seminars at conferences across the country and hearing the horror stories about their tech projects getting out of control, thousands and thousands of dollars wasted with no products to show for them. And I don't mean like $10,000, which is a lot of money. But what I mean is $60,000, $80,000, even a startup who lost $100,000 of their seed round to outsourcing simply because they didn't know what they were doing. One of the stories that always breaks my heart is a student of mine who was in real estate. So she hired the best consultant in her area. She's in local middle America. And the guy had an amazing track record. So she was like, okay, I'm not technical, but I need to be able to find the best talent to put in place so that I can protect my idea and make sure that it's built properly. And she didn't have a lot of money, so she sold her house so she can afford to pay his rates. That's how much conviction she had with her idea. And a year and a half later, she discovered that he hired a team of developers in another country to do the development that she hired him to do. And of course, he didn't manage the team properly. He had a totally hands-off approach. And after paying him thousands of dollars, she didn't have anything to show for it. And when I met her, she almost had to start all of her development from scratch, right? And this is not a unique situation. I've heard thousands of similar stories. And at first, I actually blamed the developers and agencies, and I just couldn't understand how they could morally function like this or even stay in business. But this is the revelation that I made. The more I dug into it, the more I started realizing that the problem is not always with developers. Most often, it's actually the entrepreneur. And part of the problem for non-technical entrepreneurs is not knowing the process for building web and mobile applications, not knowing how to communicate their ideas so that the tech team will know exactly what to do, not knowing how to hire the right tech people, not knowing how to manage the project, trusting that the developers will take care of everything, and not knowing the right questions to ask to ensure that the right decisions are made for the business and that all of the technology decisions are actually aligned with business goals. And when you don't know any of these things, you will always, always, always make a lot of costly mistakes because you will miss a lot of the red flags. The red flags are always there. But when you don't know what you don't know, it's like going to a mechanic without knowing anything about cars. You will believe everything they tell you. You will buy everything they tell you, and you will fix everything they tell you that needs to be fixed because you want your car to work, right? And the same thing happens during development. When you don't know what you don't know, you don't have a way to spot the red flags or know when to ask the right questions and actually make sure that you're not being duped, or even see that the suggestion that is best that the person is making is best for your situation right in that minute. So the issue here, and that was the big realization that I made, was not that outsourcing doesn't work. The issue is that you may not know how to do it properly. And the good news is that I can easily teach you how to do that. And what helps me be successful is having a really efficient process that I've refined over the years. And in a few minutes, we'll actually dive into the 3 key things inside my process that allow me to manage teams successfully, whether they're in-house or outsourced, without wasting thousands of dollars. So TechSpeak 10-step process, we're going to go through it in in the three sections, right? So the three key things. And the first thing is to not build more than you need to. Because no matter how good your team is, whether they're in-house or outsourced or any combination of that, you will always waste a lot of time and money if you jump straight into coding without refining your idea or the solution. You will always end up building a lot of unnecessary features and functionalities that your customers won't end up using, which results in a lot of wasted development. Even if you work with the best team, wasted development is going to cost you a lot of time and a lot of money. So to avoid that, we have two steps. The first one is to validate, and the second step is to prototype, and we'll dive into both of those now. The first one is validation. It's the first step in the process and is going to try to remove as much guesswork as possible early in the process, right? We want to be able to know that we're not just solving good ideas, that we're solving painkiller problems. We don't want to solve vitamin problems, right? Because if people just want what you're building but don't actually need it, you will always, always, always have a much harder time getting customers to use and pay for your products and functionalities. And you would refine your ideas through a process called customer development. And customer development validation is not about putting together a few surveys or doing focus groups. To get these types of valuable insights, you have to follow a very detailed hypothesis testing process by conducting one-on-one interviews with your potential customers. And these interviews are designed, again, to remove the guesswork and assumptions from all of your ideas before you build them. How many of you think your ideas are perfect? Me included, right? We are in love with our ideas. But what we need to do is to be able to validate that, not that it's only a good idea, but that there is a market for it, that there's people who are willing to pay for it, and all of these other things. Okay? So my customer development process consists of 10 steps. It has over 20 worksheets that I use and follow. So it's actually a very lengthy process. And I know so many founders who read all of the books on customer validation. Raise your hand if you've heard of the Lean Startup. These are all ideas that come from Steve Blank, customer validation, the Lean Startup. They read all of the books, they know all of the terminology, but they either implement it incorrectly or frankly, they don't do it at all, because the books, unfortunately, don't teach you the step-by-step for how to actually put it into a process. How do you talk to customers so that you understand what you're testing and extract that information from them? You must focus on testing the right hypotheses and design your interviews in a way that does not lead the user to your solution. In fact, I recommend that you forget about your solution in the validation step, and here's why. So I have a student who's going through the program, and she was referred to me by a startup advisor who knows me, and she literally told her, just do what Nelly says. She knows what she's doing. You have to follow everything that she says. So she came into the program with a prototype, and she says to me, so basically she went at step number 2 and didn't do step number 1. She said to me, Nelly, I don't need to go back to step number 1. I don't need to do validation. I am a veteran in this industry. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I know my market in and out. And I know that this is the solution that they need. But of course, I pushed her to do customer development. I said, forget about your solution and do some customer discovery interviews for a week or 2. And if you discover something new, amazing, because you can take those new insights and bake them directly into the product, into the solution. And of course, that will save you time and money from recoding later. And if you don't learn anything new, also great, because that will give you a lot more confidence that you're headed in the right direction. And of course, reluctantly, she did. And she discovered one insight in her second interview that she continued to verify over the next 2 weeks that completely changed the solution. She was still solving the same problem for the same exact market, but she discovered that she needed to do that in a completely different way. Her original solution was actually a part of the final solution, but it wasn't the main part. And that, of course, saved her so much money and time. Imagine her spending 2 or more years to sell a solution that no one fully resonated with, and she would have no idea why, right? Which is why we want to be able to do this. And actually, the more expert you are at your field, the more you will fall into this trap, right? Because you'll feel like you know everything. And the cost of validation has cascading effects, always, always. First in the development stage, and then in the sales and marketing stage. You will spend extra time and money at every stage, possibly for features and functionalities that no one will ever use. So learn how to do this properly, understand how important it is, and um, and add it to your process. Okay, so this is your second action step of commitment to doing validation to begin with, and then to doing validation properly. Okay, so you're not leading your users to your solution. So you're actually testing things that are important for you as a business to be able to validate. So type I'm committed in the comments, and we will keep moving to the other steps. Excellent. So validation, very important because it'll allow you to remove as much guesswork as possible at the beginning. The second step is to build a clickable prototype. So once you validate the idea, you'll need to refine the solution, right? So you'll understand the problem, and then based on the problem, you need to come up, what is a solution that solves that problem directly? And we're going to do that by building an interactive prototype of the solution without writing any code. And then you will refine that solution by getting feedback from potential customers in the prototyping stage. And these prototypes are so realistic, your potential customers won't even know that it's not real. So I'm going to share a demo of a recording of me using a mobile app prototype on my phone. So this is not a real app, it's a prototype, a clickable prototype. Okay, so you can see how realistic these can be.
This is a recording of me using the prototype on my phone. As you can see, I can click on buttons and different elements, and it feels like I'm using a real app. We're simulating these interactions using prototyping tools. These tools allow us to easily define what elements will be clickable and what the user will see when they click on the hotspot. And all of this is done without writing any code. Looks pretty realistic, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Type an emoji in the chat if you think that that was impressive, right? And again, it was not real code. It was done through tools like Adobe XD and Figma and Sketch, so many prototyping tools. Not a line of code was written, right? But let me show you and demonstrate how valuable this prototyping is through an example. So here you see a non-technical entrepreneur who wanted to build a tech application around politics, the demo that you just saw. Prototyping helped them test multiple solutions before writing code. The very first two versions of their solution completely did not resonate with their users. They collected user feedback. They went back to the drawing board and got it right on the third try. And if they had jumped into coding after creating the first prototype, they would have had to re-architect their entire app later and rewrite a lot of the code. And that would have been very expensive. Writing code is a way of building a clickable prototype, but it is the most expensive way of doing so, which is why I want you to start refining your solutions with clickable prototypes, because it is a lot cheaper to rapidly change prototypes than it is to rewrite code. And I'm sure you guys have heard of no-code tools. Here, when we're talking about clickable prototypes, it is not using no-code tools to build clickable prototypes. Clickable prototypes have no code behind them, okay? No-code tools, even though they're drag and drop way of writing code, right? But there's code on the back end, and it takes a lot more time for you to edit and modify and do things like that, okay? So even if you're going to be using no-code tools, which is the second part of the process that we're going to go through, you should never skip this step, okay? Because this is, again, allows you to remove guesswork from your process before you get into the building step. Okay, great. And it actually gets a lot easier and better. So I'm going to share a story of Gabe. So Gabe was a realtor who saw a lot of inefficiencies in the real estate business. And he used these two steps, validation and prototyping, to come up with a solution to solve some of those inefficiencies. He took his clickable prototype, not a working product, to a real estate agency, his own client, and was able to sign them on as a customer and got paid in advance to build it. Can you imagine what it would feel like to get paid in advance to build your app? I've countless of examples of people who just did validation, build a clickable prototype, and then went to sell it without doing any of the other steps that I'm going to teach you. But what that does, again, is allows you to get customers, get letters of intent, get paid, right? So many different opportunities. As a non-technical person, if you are just starting out and you just do these two steps, how much validation can you get, right? To actually attract a person. And then another example I'm going to share with you is Alex. So Alex was in a B2B marketing space. He did the same thing. He went and sold his clickable prototype, first did validation, then sold his clickable prototype, got 7 letters of intent from that. And he was a non-technical founder. He was in conversations with an outsourcing agency. And while all of that was delayed a little bit, he came up with an MVP, or minimal viable product, was his done through a spreadsheet. Okay, so his product or his idea of delivering value to his customer was not actually a tech solution. It was a spreadsheet. And out of those 7 customers who paid him with letters of intent, right? Not actually paid, but signed letters of intent, 2 of those became actual paying customers. So there's a lot of different things that you can do in sales. If you're really good at sales and marketing, you just have to do these 2 steps, and that is going to be amazing. Okay? Who's excited about that? Right? And this, by the way, validate and prototype is step 1 of earning your technical co-founder strategy that we learned about, and will not require any technical skills for you to execute on. Okay? Let's keep moving. Step number 2 is to define your MVPs properly by understanding what affects the cost of development. So once you refine your idea and the solution, you're now ready to define, build, and deploy that solution. You now need to define a minimal viable version of the prototype that you created. So this is steps 3 to 7 in the TechSpeak process. By definition, an MVP is the smallest number of features that you can launch with that will still provide value to your customers. Okay, it's all about providing value to your customers. But simply reducing the number of features that you launch with from, let's say, 20 to 10, right? That's what a lot of people do. They reduce the number of features. It's a good first step, but it is not enough. Let me show you why. Have you ever wondered how the same exact project can be estimated to cost $10,000, $50,000, even $100,000, and all 3 estimates could be completely legitimate? Think about that. How is that possible? Same exact project spec, 3 different costs, and all of them are legitimate. Well, that's because the details of what and how you build something matter a lot. One of these details is knowing what affects the cost of development. Here's an example to illustrate this. What do you think will cost more to implement? This form, where you collect the user's location in 4 fields, or this form, where you ask the user to just enter the zip code and then automatically show them their city and state? Type your answer in the chat, number 1 or number 2. So Josh says 2, Calvin says 2. What is it? Brian said 1, Amy said 2. Great. Marvin said 2, and Dave said 1. Jess said 2. Okay, great. So if you said number 2, you are absolutely correct. In the second implementation, we have to actually write more code on the back end to get the user's city and state based on zip code. There's some kind of database, right, that matches up zip code to location. So there's a lot more coding. It looks prettier, right? It's fewer fields, but you're not just collecting data, you're actually writing some code. So number 2 will take longer to implement, and it'll cost more money, not just time, right, but more money to be able to implement that. So you can actually, on purpose, decide to implement the cheaper version of this solution to save money. And, maybe you start with number 1 and then you optimize to number 2 once you've validated that people want this. And there's lots and lots of decisions like this that you can make that will help you control the costs of your MVPs. Using the many development cost reducing strategies that I teach, one of my students was able to reduce the cost of her MVP from $50,000 to $15,000. And more importantly, she cut the development time from 4 months to 2. Can you imagine what it would feel like to get your project costs reduced from $50,000 to $15,000? Wouldn't that be amazing? Type yes in the chat if you would like the cost of your projects to be significantly reduced, right? Every one of us, we're all here to figure out how to do it properly, right? Well, here's the problem. The problem is that most developers and most agencies won't tell you this because their incentive is the more you build, the more they get paid. So it's really important for you to know these cost reducing strategies so you can work with them and push them to help you reduce the costs of your MVPs and push back if they try to tell you it's not possible or this is the only way to do something. Or they tell you we need to build something that really scales to millions of users when you only have 100 or 1,000. It doesn't make sense. You need to strategically plan things and optimize over time. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have a plan for scaling, right? And I teach you that, all of that. But you should have a plan, but you don't need to scale before you're ready. Your goal is to launch as quickly as possible and refine and iterate from there. And your job as the CEO is to implement a new way of thinking to make sure that your team is not building more than you have to. Okay? Let's do another commitment. Commit to not building more than you need to. Type I'm committed in the chat. If you're watching a replay, make sure you write it down somewhere. Again, this is your action step. Very, very important. If you want to control costs, you have to be in charge of deciding what and how you're going to build, especially if you're working with outsourcing teams or third-party developers who are not your internal team. Okay? Great. Secret number 3, have an impeccable process based on lean and agile methodologies to manage your teams. So validating ideas and building a clickable prototype are a part of the lean product development process, but it goes beyond that. The bigger picture behind the lean way of building products is this whole mindset of learn early, learn often, and learn cheap. And a lot of developers and outsourcing teams don't think about that. They don't think how to cut development time and cost. It goes against on how they make money. So it's going to be up to you to take this learn early, learn often, learn cheap philosophy and make it a part of your company culture and have someone on your team to enforce the lean way of building products at every step of your product development process so you can iterate really quickly. And agile project management process will allow you to get working code from developers in at most 2 weeks. Working code in at most 2 weeks, and it can actually be weekly, daily, or even multiple times a day, right? So the beauty of agile project management is seeing mistakes earlier and course correcting sooner. From my experience, there are a lot more agencies and developers who are familiar with these principles. There's so many different types of agile principles, right? So they say we are agile, but in practice, they're not, right? In practice, when I work with these teams, I see that they're woefully lacking in effective practices. And this is, again, when as a fractional CTO, when I spent a lot of time and go into startups to fix their process in agile practices so that they execute a lot more efficient. So remember that you can launch code in 2 weeks or as often as every single day. It depends on how good your process is and how well your team is executing. And the faster you are launching, the faster you're learning, and the faster you can use the data points of your learning to make better decisions for the next step and the next step. To me, an efficient process is absolutely everything because it creates transparency throughout the project so you can detect earlier when things are headed in the wrong direction. And I want to demonstrate how important an efficient process is with this story. So this is Eric. He had a software startup for 3 years before he learned the TechSpeak process, the process I'm sharing with you today. He had a tech team, he had a CTO, and this is what he said after 3 years of running his software startup. After 3 years in business, TechSpeak would have saved us close to $500,000 in delays, development costs, and sleepless nights. I will let you absorb that for a second. That's a savings of $500,000 over a 3-year span. That's the benefit of having an optimized process based on lean and agile methodologies. And guess what? He actually fired his CTO after he learned this process, right? So he had to get someone new in who's in charge of tech to implement this new process of how they're going to go about it. Okay, there is a difference between releasing code and releasing code effectively and efficiently. Lots and lots of developers are releasing code every single day, launching new features, improving existing features. But if they're not using these methodologies in their process, then I guarantee that you're wasting valuable time and money due to inefficiencies and miscommunications. Okay, and I want you to get into a habit of releasing code as often as you can, multiple times a day if you can, because that shortens your learning time, gives you a lot more data points to make better decisions, and allows you to catch mistakes earlier and course correct faster. Okay, so another point is even if you have your own technical teams, when you get your technical team, please don't rely on developers to come up with a process. Most developers are not managers or might not be familiar with the latest methodologies that I'm teaching you here, right? They may have picked up a thing or two from their previous companies, startups, but they're not using the latest stuff. They're not using lean methodologies or agile processes that work very well with lean. So you know now that you need to have a good process, right? We just learned what a good process is. One that reduces a lot of the guesswork, right? Removes the guesswork, and one that iterates really, really quickly. There are 2 key roles that you must have in your startup to run this process, okay? A product manager and a project manager. And if you're outsourcing development, you must have a product and a project manager on your team, on your end, even though the agency may have their own project manager. And you need to enforce your own process and manage the development team internally. Otherwise, prepare to overpay and have a lot of inefficiencies. I call this developer as a service arrangement. This is where you manage the developers directly and enforce your own process. And in the early days, this job will most likely fall to the non-technical founder, which is you in the room. Because oftentimes you don't have the funds to hire a product and a project manager. right? Which is why I started teaching non-technical founders how to do this. It's very important for you to understand how to do product management and project management using a lot of these lean methodologies infused in them. And the last piece of the puzzle, if you're not technical, to allow you to manage a team successfully is to become technically literate. What does this mean? This means that you need to learn some fundamental technical concepts. You'll need to know what some of the jargon means. You'll need to understand the best technical processes and know how to easily identify when things are going wrong. Become knowledgeable about the web, how things work, what's behind the scenes, what happens when you click on a button on the browser, right? Conceptually understanding what happens on the back end. Understand servers, how all of that communication happens. Learn about the different languages and how they work together. Understand APIs, databases, libraries, frameworks, no code, low code, third-party tools, all of the jargon. Understand the high level of what goes on behind the scenes of your product. Then you can set expectations in your mind and with your team on how things should work. This will allow you to catch when someone's trying to take advantage of you or is giving you bad advice, which happens so often, even from well-meaning technical people and advisors, by the way. This will give you the confidence to have those conversations and ask the right questions. This will give you the confidence to push back when a developer says it can't be done or it can only be done a certain way. It will give you the confidence to control and negotiate how much time something should take and how much money it should cost. The confidence that you get from being technically literate is literally going to change how other technical people perceive you. You're going to be able to attract better technical people simply because you're able to communicate with them much more effectively. Last commitment of the day, I want you to commit right now in the chat to take steps to becoming more technically literate. Type I am committed in the comments. This will be a game changer for you. You have to. Like if you want to lead a tech team, this is not an optional thing. You cannot even hire this out. Okay, you have to become technically literate, whether you're going to have an internal team or an external team outsourced. This is going to be your job if you want to run a technical company. What happens is once you learn the basics, your brain changes. And so when things happen in, like right now, it's AI, you can make the leap because you're the business person, you understand the customers and so much more about the vision of where you want to go. So you now start to make connections of how all of this fits together. But until you have that foundational knowledge of tech, right? Not deep, I'm not telling you to become coders, but understanding on high level what happens and how it happens, that gives you power, okay? Everything is very, very important in the tech space. Okay, let's do our review of everything that we've covered so far. First, you learned that you have to earn a technical co-founder and not look for one. You also learned that outsourcing may actually be the best way to find a technical co-founder by helping you to get to traction. You learned that you need to validate and prototype all of your ideas so you don't build more than you need to use development cost reducing strategies when defining your MVPs to reduce the cost and time of development, to implement lean and agile processes to manage your teams effectively. You also learned that there's a difference between releasing code and releasing code effectively and efficiently, and that you must become more technically literate. And I'd love to know from all of these ideas, what has been the most valuable for you so far? Let me know in the comments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all, or what combination of the 6? These are, by the way, your action steps, right? Josh says number 2 and 4. Excellent. The most important ones. Great. Let's see. Dave says number 1, the earn concept. Love that. Calvin says 2, 3, and 6. Marvin says 2, 3, and 6. Jess says the reminder to become more technically literate. I love that. 2. Jess says 2, of course. And then Robert says 2 and 3. Excellent. Well, before we move on to the Q&A, I want to talk about some of the next steps for those of you who are interested in possibly working with me. I have TechSpeak for Our Entrepreneurs Academy. It's a self-paced program where you can learn how to implement all of the steps. So go to techspeak.co and check it out. In your downloads, there is a exclusive discount for you guys if you want to check it out. These are all the modules and all, like basically everything I taught you here, I'm teaching you how to do. But we also, in October, are running a cohort-based accelerator using the TechSpeak curriculum as the backbone. We're going to run 2 paths for people in the idea stage. They will validate the idea, learn the tech process, and become pitch ready in 10 weeks. And for those of you who already have an MVP and you want to learn how to optimize it, you can choose the MVP optimization step. All of that is on the website, techspeak.co/accelerator. If you're interested in that, check it out. Reserve your spot because we're only taking 10 teams, essentially. So check that out if you are interested. All right, let's go into the Q&A. So let me, here's my email address, by the way. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or anything else that I've said to you. But if you have a question, raise your hand, and I think we can unmute. So I think we're a relatively small group here. So you can unmute and just ask your question. We have, I'm okay to stay for the next 10, 15 minutes if you guys are okay with that. But does anybody have questions?
Hi.
Nelly, I just want to note, this is Jennifer here from Start Out. I just want to note that I do have to run another meeting right at the hour, but I can add you as a host, and you should be able to stay on, and then the recording will just upload to our Start Out account.
Perfect. Sounds good. Calvin, feel free to unmute yourself and just ask the question.
Hi, thank you so much for hey, Nelly, I have a question.
I think, Robert, mute yourself. I think Calvin raised his hand first. So I'm going to take your question right after that. Okay? Great. Calvin, are you, can you unmute yourself and just ask the question?
Yes, can you hear me?
You're very low. Your sound is very low.
Hello, testing.
Yes, yes.
Hi, thank you so much. The talk's been awesome. For stage 2, the validation step, in terms of like interviewing potential customers and evaluating like your perfect customer, do you have any advice on how to do that without necessarily like giving the whole thing away, or how to not be too intrusive on people? Like, is there a sweet spot in terms of like length of conversation? Any advice on that front?
Yes, absolutely. So in the validation, and I think this is a huge misconception on talking to customers, you're never sharing your secret sauce. In fact, you're not even sharing your product. Okay, so your goal is to understand what are your riskiest assumptions that you're testing. Create a hypothesis around that, and then set up experiments to validate, or what I say in to my TechSpeak students, invalidate your hypothesis. Okay, because that's stronger. A lot of people make the mistake also to ask questions in a way that kind of validates. They want to hear what they hear, right? So there's a bias towards hearing what they want to hear to validate their own assumptions. But the key is to really create a hypothesis so that you understand what it is that you need to test, and then extract that information. It's about extracting, discovering, learning something that you didn't know before. Okay? And it's never about sharing the solution or what necessarily you're working on. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, Robert, go ahead and unmute yourself. And if you have a question, raise your hand so I can see that you have a question. And maybe I'll stop sharing so I can see you guys better. Yes, Robert, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hi, Nelly. That was a great presentation. I've been struggling with my product I'm trying to build is data heavy, and I'm a non-techie, of course. And I've been struggling with just trying to build the MVP with other people. I've tried a few different times to build it with different developers and haven't spent any money yet, but I've had some kind of outrageous quotes, for what I'm trying to do. And so I was thinking about using like a website like Kadoa, Kadoa. It's like a AI code builder kind of thing.
Okay.
Because some of the information I'm getting from the type of websites that I need the information from is in PDF form, and some of it's in like HTML, and some of it's just there's such variety
Right.
that I was thinking if I could use something like Kadoa and like set up the uh like the what do you call it, the scrapes, if I could set those up to be automatic, maybe I could manage it myself and
Yep.
then just, but
So
I don't know.
yes, absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen again, just so that I can show the process again, just to make sure that you, where are we? Can you guys see my screen again?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so let me get back to the 10 steps. Okay, here. So even though right now you're talking about this step, right? So you're trying to build an MVP. If you haven't done validation, right? What I tell my students, do validation, build a clickable prototype, and then go do sales. Because building a solution is actually, in hindsight, the easiest thing to do. I know it's hard for a lot of non-technical people because that's the black box, right? But it is so much simpler to build than to get these two steps right. So I don't know if you've done that. Most people jump into building a solution first, but let's assume that you've done these two steps. Now, part of determining what and how you're going to build something, falls into steps 3 to 7. In this case, you're talking about a third-party tool to be able to help you get to something faster, right? Like to be able to get to a solution faster. I fully encourage that. If there's no-code tools, low-code tools, third-party APIs, AI tools, use all the technology at your disposal to be able to launch this thing as quickly as possible. Okay, so if you already know a potential thing that you can do to get to market faster, I am all about that. I don't know if that helps you, Robert, and if that is what you're asking.
Well, it does, but I've been wondering if I should hire like a developer specific a few of these, they call them workflows or whatever, set it up so that I could, because I was thinking I could use that for the MVP also.
Absolutely. Yep. So the key here is to determine, like, if your clickable prototype, you work backwards, right? So your clickable prototype is what the user will see, right? And you need to be able to then map out what happens on the back end. Those are called technical requirements, technical specs. And then if you're able to put that together, then you can figure out what are the right tools for me to accomplish each one of the steps to get to the result.
Okay.
And who you need to hire to be able to accomplish that. Because maybe for step number 1, you need to do X, you need to work with one type of team. For step number 2, you could be maybe working with another type of team, right? So this is what I teach a lot of people here is there's a lot of options, but you need to understand what it is that you need to accomplish, work backwards, and then create a plan, create the technical specifications that you can give to people even when you're working with agencies or technical people, and say, this is what I want. This is, remember earlier at the top, I said one of the mistakes that a lot of people, non-technical people do is talk in a language that technical people don't understand. And what that does is it creates a lot of miscommunications. Miscommunications is another reason why a lot of projects go awry. You have one vision of what your vision looks like, and then if you communicate it in the wrong way, or in the right way from your perspective, but in the wrong way from the way technical person understands it, then they're going to implement the way they understood it. Do you see the problem? And they're going to deliver something you didn't expect. And so part of the creating the technical specifications and mapping things out is so that you both can have a clear picture and there's no guesswork, right? You both are seeing what needs to be built and how. Then you're having a conversation and you're at least starting on the same playing level field. Make sense?
Yep. Thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else have questions? Raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Great. All right. So next session we're doing is in 2 weeks on how to reach product market fit faster, October 1st. So sign up for that if you are interested, and reach out to me if I can be of help. Again, check out the resources that I've created. I've been teaching TechSpeak since 2012. When I started, I was just tired of hearing all the horror stories that I've heard from a lot of non-technical founders. So the resources are there. If you want something more structured and for someone to actually check your work and give you assignment and take you from point A to point B in 10 weeks, then join the accelerator. That'll be the fastest way to go through this. Okay, you are welcome. It was such a pleasure to present to you guys. I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks for the next session. Have a great afternoon.